Weird. So I will just share my screen. Okay, so you should be able to see the presentation now. So welcome to Year 6 SATs presentation, Parents, Carers and Guardians. This is just a quick whistle-stop tour, just to let parents know about SATs and what to expect. And we will touch on like secondary schools as well. So just to let you know, SATs is a term people use to refer to the end of Key Stage 2 assessments. They last for about 4 days, and the first test is on the 11th of May, and the last test is on Thursday, the 14th of May. And you can see there on the screen, there a couple of papers on Monday. So you've got the GPS spelling paper 1, and then we have the GPS spelling paper 2 as well, which we will go into more detail over what the 2 papers are. There is also a reading paper on the Tuesday, and then after that, it's all maths based. So then on the Wednesday, we have an arithmetic test and we have a reasoning paper. And then on Thursday, to finish off, we have another reasoning. Writing is assessed using evidence collected by myself throughout the Year 6. So there's no actual Year 6 SAT writing test necessarily. We kind of just judge it based and assess it based on their writing over the course of Year 6. So when and how are the SATs carried out? So they do take place during normal school hours, under exam conditions. They're not allowed to talk to each other from the moment the assessments are handed out until they're collected after the test has ended. The papers aren't marked internally, they're marked externally. And then they tend to get the results at some point in July. The timings of the tests differ, but they don't last more than an hour. So you can see on the screen there, you've got one of the GPS papers about 45 minutes, the second paper is 15 minutes, the reading is 1 hour, and then the maths vary from either 30 minutes to 40 minutes. So the arrangements for SATs. So children with additional needs who have similar provision in their day-to-day learning at school may be allocated specific arrangements. So for example, some of them might have extra time. Tests may be opened early to be modified. An adult may be able to read for them. An adult could scribe for them. Could be written or spoken translations of the mathematics reasoning papers. We could have some rest breaks as well, and arrangements for children who are ill or injured at the time of the tests as well. So what sort of results are reported? So once marked, the test will be given in different ways. So 3 different ways. So you'll get a raw score, a scaled score, and a judgment of whether the national standard has been met. So the raw score, so you will get towards like when you get the results at the end of the year, you will get the sheet that tells you the scores. You'll see a raw score, which is basically the total number of marks achieved for each paper. Then you will see a scaled score. Now, when a scaled score is given, it is given in a range from 80 to 120. And we tend to say a scaled score of 100 or more is meeting the national standard. There are no separate tests for higher achieving pupils. However, we say a scaled score close to 120 would show that a child is working above the national standard. So on Monday, the 11th of May, it's our GPS sort of tests. So it's made up of 2 papers. Paper 1 is the longer one. It's lasts 45 minutes. Children will be tested on grammar, punctuation, and spelling generally. Then paper 2 is the shorter paper. It lasts around 15 minutes, where it's basically a spelling test. And I'll show you what the test looks like as well. So some examples. And in that test, they just ask to fill in a blank within a sentence, attempting to spell out the word in context correctly. So GPS paper 1, the 45 minutes one, the children will be prepared by their class teacher, by myself. So they're equipped with good knowledge of the technical vocab needed to identify and describe various aspects of grammar and punctuation marks. So it focuses on these sorts of areas. So you've got grammatical terms, word classes, functions of sentences, combining words, phrases and clauses, verb form, tenses and consistency, punctuation, vocabulary and standard English as well. The grammar and punctuation spelling requires a range of answer types. you'll see, which I'll go through, such as they might have to circle missing capital letters, they might have to underline certain words, they might only have to give one word answers. So these are some of the examples. So this is what we'll be going through in classes as well. So as you can see, tick the sentence that must end in a question mark. They just need to tick. And it's really clear, and we've just got to make sure that the children are focusing on where it says tick 1, not to tick 2. Because if they've ticked 2 and they've ticked one of the ones that are correct and one incorrect, they won't get a mark for it. In this one, it just says circle, so they've just got to make sure they circle the correct verb, I think it is in that one. And here, 23, question 23, it is drawing a line. So they've just got to make sure that they draw a line to match each word to its correct antonym. So here they're matching, so they've just got, we just tend to say they have rulers on tables, just make sure the line is clear. If they do make a mistake, they do have rubbers to use as well. We're kind of getting them trained up to show us as well, just to make sure that if they do rub it out, it is clear that we can see they've rubbed out the mistake. And you can see here. So this is what the second paper looks like, this spelling. So it'll be an example question like this. Omar, put the cutlery back in there, and then it'll be a blank. So this is what they will see on their question sheet. And then this is what the teacher will have. So this is what we will have, and we just read it as it is. So for spelling 20, the word is possession. Ellen's gold bracelet was her most treasured possession. The word is possession. So the children will hear the word a few times before they have a go at writing it. That brings us on to the reading SATS test paper. That's on Tuesday, the 12th of May. The assessment has been designed to measure whether children's comprehension of age-appropriate reading material meets the national standard. It is a standard time of 60 minutes, so it's an hour long. It's the longest test, including reading the text and answering questions. So there are 3 different set texts for children to read, which could be any combination of non-fiction, fiction, and or poetry. So we aren't told beforehand what it is. And it focuses on all of the domains that you can see there. The Year 6 reading SATS paper requires a range of answering styles, so including responding to multiple choice questions, one-word answers, and multiple mark questions, which require more formal paragraph length answers. So again, it's similar to GPS. They'll have some questions where they might be joining words. They might have ones where they've just got to tick one answer, but then other times they might have a very long sort of paragraph to write for their answer. These are an example of a question. So this is based on text 1, space tourism. So there they can see the text. It will obviously, that's just based on a paragraph within that text. So it just won't just be like that short. And then they have a question based on it. The children do know and train them up to look at how many marks there are. So it's kind of like 1 point they need to make. And this is focusing on retrieval. So the retrieval. So this answer, they should be able to find in there. Then it says here, award 1 mark for answers that refer to floating down the tube or holding the cable. So if it's anything referring to something similar to that, they would get a mark. And this is another example question based on text 2. So again, gentle and small and frail. Which part of the snail do these words describe? Circle the part of the snail in the picture below. So this one, they've got to circle the part of the snail that those words describe. And it was there. Okay, so this is on text 3. So we tend to find that the texts do get a bit more tricky as they go along. And you can see here, this is a 2-mark question. It's a prediction question. And the one thing that I've mentioned to parents at parents' evening, it's just the evidence. So we do go on about that quite a lot in Year 6 now. So with their evidence, they just need to use evidence to support their answer. So it's finding the evidence in the text. So if they have a prediction or if they have an answer, how did you get that? Why do you think that? Where is the evidence in the text? And there it gives you 2 ways of how they could have responded. So since the current testing format for the SATS Year 6 SATS began in 2016, there have been tendency for the number of marks to go in favour towards 3 particular types of content domain questions. So what that means is what we tend to find is there's more type of domain questions than other ones. So 20% of the marks, So this is an example in 2017. 20% of the marks could be gained by answering questions where children had to explain the meaning of words in context. Over a quarter of the marks were from retrieval, and the other sort of half, or almost half of the other marks were sort of your inference questions. So that's why in year 6, even if you're reading at home with the children, we tend to say kind of focus on retrieval, so where the answer is in the text, and then inference, whereas if a character does something, why are they doing that? So that really reading between the lines. So when reading it with your child at home, try asking questions like these. So find a word in the paragraph that is closest in meaning to, and then, for example, it could be annoyed. In what year did provide a fact? So give a fact from the text. In the last paragraph, X does not want to Y. So you could obviously use these as a structure to give yours. It could be, why does the character feel like that? Where's the evidence to show that? And I know in year 6 they tend to read on their own at home, but I have said to my year 6 children that like they could test you. So at least you might give them the question, but they're testing you possibly, so they've got to find the answer. Just try and think of creative ways for them to engage with reading at home. Now we move on to maths. So the first paper, which is on Wednesday, the 13th of May, this is the arithmetic. So this is 30 minutes and it's worth a total of 40 marks. And it covers the 4 operations, so division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. There are also mixed operation calculations requiring BIDMAS, or some of you may know it as BODMAS, as well as number properties, calculating percentage of amounts, looking at decimals and using fractions as well. There are a couple of questions where children will have 2 marks. Most of them are 1-mark questions. The 2-mark questions are the ones where children will might get just 1 mark if they've shown a correct method, and they might have just done one little mistake. So this is an example of a 2-mark question. So this is long division. If we see it here, they would write down the lots. We've covered this in class, and then they would work out the answer. This is another example of a 2-mark question. So it's long division for 2 marks and long multiplication as well. Then these are sort of the simple 1-mark questions. So we've got 979 add 100. So what I tend to find is that some children might not show their working, and it doesn't say show their working, but I do encourage the children to show their working, because there's been many times where children will make a really simple mistake because they know it's some of them might find it really easy and they'll make a simple mistake. So what I tend to say, and if you could repeat it to them at home as well, just make sure that they check their answers as well as they go through. Here's another example. And then this is looking at BIDMAS or BODMAS. So for this type of question, we have trained the children to write BODMAS down, maybe on the test, and they can tick off each letter as they go through it. Here's a percentage question. So we're actually looking at this today in class. So this is where they've got to work out percentage of an amount. And as you can see, we've broken it down there. This is what we would expect to see. And you might be thinking it's quite a lot just for 1 mark, and it is, but they become so it becomes quite automatic with them to them. So they should be okay with this question. Again, it's making sure that they're showing they're working out. So this is an example of decimals. And again, here I'd expect them to show they're working out when they're answering this question. And then last but not least, fractions. Paper 2 and 3 is all to do with reasoning. So we do have 1 reasoning paper on Wednesday and we have another on the Thursday. Both have standard timings of 40 minutes and they're worth 35 marks each. So this paper requires children to demonstrate their mathematical knowledge and skills, as well as their ability to solve problems and their mathematical reasoning. So questions focus on the following mathematical topic areas here. So you can see the types of areas. So if you think about the arithmetic, it's all the other stuff to do with maths, so like Roman numerals. It could still be the 4 operations, but more word problems. It could be properties of shapes, area and perimeter, ratio and proportion, algebra. Still looking at fractions, decimals, and percentages as well. The questions do generally get harder throughout the paper, and it is not unusual for a child to be unable to complete the entire paper in time. So don't worry if you're practicing at home or when we practice at school, we're never worried if a child doesn't finish the paper. We try and work with them to think of different ways where they could speed up. So this is an example of like a reasoning question. So look, this is looking at time. So Stefan's watch shows 5 minutes past 9. The watch is 12 minutes fast. What is the correct time? So for this, they don't necessarily have working out sort of paper, but they can just use all the space provided to show they're working. And then there's 2 possible ways they could get a mark for. And then this is looking at Roman numerals. So here is a number written in Roman numerals. Write the number in figures. I'm just going to stop, just pause for a second. Realize I was, apologies if I did not let you all in. Apologies if you weren't all in that then. So just moving on to another question that you might see in the reasoning paper. So this is looking at angles. So the one thing I do speak to the children about where it says not to scale, because they will have access to protractors and rulers. And when they have and it might say not to scale. What that means is that that's not accurate. So if they were to measure that, that wouldn't be 38 degrees. So it's just making sure you could keep that clear. If we're just going to pause just for 1 second.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll just say if they can't get it, don't worry, we'll share the recording afterwards.
Right, apologies again. Yes, so that's not 38 degrees. What they would have to do is use their knowledge of angles and isosceles triangles to work that out. And this is all going to be covered in school as well. So we will give maths homework based on different topics leading up to the SATs as well. So this is another question. So this is looking at milliliters. So looking at measurements. So Chen pours 165 milliliters of milk into a measuring jug. Draw an arrow on the jug to show the level of milk. So it's them actually be able to read this sort of number line here and work out where would 165 be. And it would be roughly around there. So it's just drawing draw an arrow, so they could draw it like that. If they obviously draw it in an incorrect place, then obviously they won't get that mark, but it's roughly around there. So if we can see that they're trying to do it around there, that's how they would get a mark. And then here, write the number 53,148 in words. So they are practiced. So we do go through practicing this as well in class. They've had lots of work on this probably throughout their primary school time as well. And this is where we go into more sort of 2-step problems. So as you can see, bag of 5 lemons cost £1. Bag of 4 oranges cost £1.80. How much more does 1 orange cost than 1 lemon? So they know how many 5 lemons, how many 4 oranges. So they have to do 2 steps to try and work that out. As you can see here. And there's 2 different ways they could show their answer, and they'd get a mark for either. Right, so how could you support your child in preparing for SATs? So firstly, a positive attitude goes a long way. So as much encouragement and support as possible. But I'm pretty sure you were probably encouraging them. I do tend to say that they don't need to worry about their SATs papers. They really don't, because by the time we get to the SATs paper, they'd have practiced so much that it would just become natural to them. Speaking about papers, if you try not to use any past papers, just because that's what we'll be using within school and you can't have access to them. But if your child does have a tutor, if you could please try to ask them not to use them. Just because, as I say, like we'll be using them and using them for assessment as well. So it would really help. Some further tips. So direct any questions or concerns you have about SATs to your child's teacher rather than worry your child with them. So like if you've got any problems, you've got any questions, some of the children are forgetful, so they might forget. So if you just send an email to the office, I can talk to you about the SATs. And we've put here is like give your child opportunity to go outside and avoid overuse of screens. So this is more so getting closer to SATs. So if some of them are studying lots, just give them a bit of a break. If they are doing any homework, if you could just go give them like a quiet corner of the house somewhere possible where they could, there's no distractions. Encourage your child to talk to their teacher or another adult they trust if they have any anxieties about SATs. And we just want them to understand that a small amount of anxiety is normal and it's not harmful, but we don't want them to think that we really don't want them to be really worried about a test paper, really. And if your child is unwilling to talk to myself or another adult in year 6, if you could talk to them, or if you just send us an email, like I said, we can talk to them for you. And then look, we've just put here, plan something nice and fun for the weekends before and after SATs. This will help your child start the week well and also give them something to look forward to, like as a bit of a reward, just for, it is quite a stressful week for them. And ensure your child is eating and drinking well and getting a suitable amount of sleep. So some other further tips. So you could create a revision timetable. We do tend to give sort of more, the homework books that they've been taking home. We tend to give those then to the children at the end, more towards SATs, where they can just use them as their own revision guides and things, so they don't have to necessarily bring it back in to show us. It could just be something that they do at home. And just keep the work light. So if you do any extra work other than the homework that we set, you could just be practicing times tables. Times tables, again, is something that I have mentioned to parents at parents' evening, just because it plays a role in most of the things that we do in maths. Practicing mental methods in real world scenarios. So it could be looking at, like today, we're looking at percentages. If you're doing your January sale shopping, it could be trying getting them to work out how much discount you would get if it was like 25% off and you were buying something. We do have Atom as well, so encourage the use of that if you do have internet access at home. And then generally just the maths and GPS work that we send, we do tend to send it that's similar to the test sort of questions, so they'll be able to have access to that as well. And the last one there really is encouraging children to read lots and lots at home. And that's not necessarily just for the reading test, actually it's for writing as well. We tend to find the children that read lots at home, their writing improves as well. So these are the types of workbooks that we're using in school, and you may see them coming home as well for homework. So this is like the GPS sort of book that we're working through here. And then this is a reading one. So some children will be in like interventions, in group work, within the lesson, with outside the lesson as well. And they'll be focused on here. And you can see in both of them, they're kind of very similar to what you might find in a test. So it's kind of supporting them in that way. So it's not completely new to them when they do it. So SATs, just things to remember about SATs. SATs focus on what they know about maths and English. So they won't actually reflect how talented they are at science, or geography, art, PE, computing, for example. And they certainly won't highlight positive personal characteristics such as kindness and integrity. So it's just solely based on maths and English. And they don't always tell the whole story. So the results will say they did or didn't meet a certain standard, but not necessarily by what margin. Because sometimes some children might just miss by 1 mark, and sometimes it might just be that on the day they didn't feel very well. So I just don't want them to stress about that. And SATs only lasts for 1 week, so it's only the 4 days, and generally on the Friday we kind of have a nice chill day in school, nice rewarding day for them. So we just want to keep that into perspective, that it's only 1 or 2 papers and they last between 30 to 60 minutes each day. Okay, so what should you do if you're worried about your child? So it's not unnatural for SATs to not induce a certain degree of worry or anxiety, but there is, of course, a tipping point. So SATs should not, and hopefully it's not going to with any of our children, but it shouldn't affect their appetite. They shouldn't, losing sleep over it. It shouldn't alter or affect a child's personality. They shouldn't sort of disengage from lessons and be a reason not to attend school. So if any of the above are evident, then SATs may be causing an excessive degree of anxiety, and your child may benefit from additional support. This isn't This isn't about removing the reality of SATs, but rather equipping your 10 or 11-year-old child to cope with the situation and be stronger for it. So, as I say, though, I tend to find that because we do so many practice papers in school, that honestly, when it comes down to the real thing, they're used to it and they actually just want to get it over and done with because they've done countless tests before. So other steps to take, so talk to your school. So if they are showing any of those symptoms, please do talk to any of us at school. We're more than happy to support with home. Spend time with your child. So if they are worried about the SATs, as I say, I don't think at the minute, it doesn't seem like many of them are worried because they're so used to seeing SAT style questions. If you do have any anxieties or concerns or views on SATs, try not to project them onto the children. Confront any media coverage. So if you see anything negative about SATs, try not to show them because they might feel negative towards them as well. And again, encourage your child to talk to their teacher. So they're linked to school, so don't be surprised if they favour the reassurance of teachers above family members. And advice for year 6 children. So I'm sure you all do this. So just listening to what the teachers say. The teacher is cheering you on and wants you to do your best. Make sure, this is what we would say to them, so make sure they get plenty of sleep and stay well fed. Sleep and food help keep the main brain moving. Read the questions carefully, so this can help to avoid any silly mistakes. So when we've done practice papers, we do kind of get them to review their papers as well and analyze them. And there's been more than one occasion where children be like, oh, I thought it was said this. And we're kind of, that's the whole point of practicing. So they're getting their mistakes out of the way now. And don't worry if there's something you can't answer, take a deep breath. You can always move on and back to it later. Like I tend to say, if they find a question hard, they circle it and they move on. If they have time at the end to go back to it, but don't worry too much. It's just, if any, in any case, it might just be 1 mark. So it's not like they're losing lots of marks. So there might be easier questions down the line. And keep in mind, is what I tend to say as well during SATs week, it's only the 1 week, it's only the 4 days of your entire life. Like I don't really remember my SATs week. So it's very small in terms of what they go on to in secondary school. During SATs Club, we do offer a free breakfast club each morning. So there will be a letter going closer to SATs. So they'll have bagels, cereal, juices, etc. And it's nice for them just to get into school a bit early, so we know we can start the tests on time. They can speak to friends if they want to, and teachers as well if they're feeling a bit nervous about the tests. But we do try and encourage them all to come as well, and it is free as well. So, and last but not least, just about secondary schools. So I know we're soon going to get to the time where children will find out which secondary school they're going to, and at Watermill, obviously, we have many secondary schools around us. So your child might go to a school where there's no other friends there, or they might be going to a school where they've got their best friend there. But we just wanted to just mention that we do speak to the local secondary schools about your child, about every single child. So we have meetings with them. We have those meetings to make sure that the transition is smooth and it's positive. We make sure that we share all the key information so that each child's new teachers understand how to best support them from the start. We do have many discussions the closer it gets to, so please don't be worried. Your child will be fully prepared by the end of year 6. So we do speak to the secondary schools, but we also speak to year 6 about what to expect in secondary schools, and we try and get them to, not have those worries. And I know most secondary schools have the transition days, and I think they're always positive for when the children come back, because they get to see what the school's like, they get to see their classes, they get to meet, their new form and stuff like that. And I think that really is positive as well. The last thing I'm going to go into is if you've got any questions, if you're watching this after this live, then please just email any questions into the office. I am more than happy to email you back. Or if you want to just speak to me at the end of the day when you're collecting your child, then that is an option as well. I am just going to stop this recording, just so then if anybody has any questions